Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here to talk about Red Table Talk. Let's talk about sex, and I believe it was episode 7. Episode, Jada and Gammy sit down to talk about sex with Willow and Willow's best friend Talana. And so Jada says that she thinks that women have a difficult time talking about sex and that she did not want Willow to have the shame of any kind. And Gammy seems like she's a little uncomfortable with this conversation because you guys know in the beginning they're like in the makeup, they're in the room getting dressed and getting their makeup and hair done. And so Gammy was asking Jada, like, well, what are we talking about today? And then Jada said sex. And then she said, oh, so Willow not going to be with us. And Jada was like, yeah, Willow is going to be with us because that's what this is all about. You know, teaching the younger generation and talking to, I guess the whole premise of the Red Table Talk is being open and honest and helping mothers have conversations, real conversations with their daughters about life, about relationships, about everything. And so Gammy, I don't think realized that, but now she has come to realize that that is what this is about. So Willow is 17 years old, and her friend Talana is 21 years old. And so I always wonder because I can remember when we first purchased this house, my daughters were 11. My oldest daughter was 11, and my youngest daughter was, well, she was like 2 or 3 years old. And there was a little girl that lived next door, and I can't remember, I think she was like in the middle between my oldest daughter and my youngest daughter. And so I always thought it was weird that she wanted to be friends with my daughter. And I kept saying to myself, and I think I finally came to the realization that younger kids that latch on to older kids are usually seeking like a brother sister relationship, especially if they're the only child. And so they're trying to find somebody to fill that role of an older siblings. But what I could never understand was the relationship between the older child and the younger child. And so, like, my daughter, like, at first she was okay because she was like, well, I'm bored, I ain't got nothing to do. I'll go over there and play with her. But as she got older, she started saying, like, I don't want to be bothered with her. She's younger than me. I'm in high school. I'm trying to do this and that. So as my daughter separated herself, then the girl, started developing a friendship with my younger daughter. And so I think that's when it really bothered me because my younger daughter, she had two older sisters. So she didn't need anybody to play with. And so I just always thought that dynamic was interesting. And then about a week ago, I was at a social event and there were several teachers there, and they got on the conversation of older students being allowed to go to school with younger students. And where I live, kids can stay in school until they're like 22 years old. And so you will have situations where in middle school where kids should be like 11, 12, 13 years old, there are kids that are 16 and 17 years old that are still in like 7th and 8th grade. And so they are a horrible influence on younger kids. And so that dynamic of the age gap doesn't really work well. And then You know, like these kids are old enough to drive, they're old enough to do things on their own, and then they're teaching that to your kids. And then when you get into the whole sex aspect, you know, a 16, 17-year-old boy hanging around with a 12 or 13-year-old girl is a disaster. You know, it's just a recipe for trouble. And so when they were doing the age thing, I was kind of thinking about that. Like I thought, like I could see Willow wanting to be friends with the older girl because she doesn't have an older sister. But I always question, why would a 21-year-old want to be friends with a 17-year-old, because you're in two totally separate places in life. So then Talana and Willow say that they talk about sex all the time. That they have conversations where they call each other and be talking about creative ways to braid and decorate your vagina hair. And I'm trying to think of a moment in time in my life where my vagina hair was long enough to be braiding it or putting hair bows on it or anything. And I definitely wasn't calling up one of my friends saying, let's decorate our coochie hair. I don't even understand how conversations like that even begin, or why kids would be having that conversation. And I kept trying to figure out throughout the show, like, are Talana and Willow like in a relationship, or like, I was just so confused about that situation, and we never did figure it out, because then later on Talana actually talks about relationships with boys. So I was confused, but I know I wasn't calling no friend of mine. First of all, I wasn't playing in my vagina hair, so I definitely wasn't calling friends about dyeing it, braiding it, parting it, or anything like that. Now, I do remember one time this guy I was dating, I did shave his initials down there, but I was grown when that took place, and it was funny as heck. And when that hair started growing back, it was really an issue. And I know a lot of women shave, just completely shave down there, and I don't have time for that. And so then Willow and Jada, you know, they agreed that they didn't have conversations with their friends like that. And like I said, I didn't either. So Jada went on to say that most kids today learn about sex through pornography. Now, I don't know where she got that statistic from or that information from. And I also wonder, like, how much of the show is edited out, and because I think we lose a lot of what they're saying because we don't get the full context of the answer, or the question. And so I think it would have been nice that instead of Jada just throwing out there a thing about kids and pornography, if she would have quoted some sources as to where she got that information from, you know, to support it. And why are kids watching pornography? Why are kids so over sexualized and so consumed with sex? And I think it goes back to the whole you know, the older man and the younger girl, and the fascination, and why girls are so willing to enter into relationships with older guys. And you know, and I guess it's because we see it so much on TV. Like, everything is sex, 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 sex in clothing, sex in social media, and maybe this is why kids are so consumed with it. And so Willow, you know, for a change, was very talkative and open and excited about this episode, this conversation. And so I was happy to see her, like, you know, coming out of her shell and just really communicating well and talking and expressing herself. But there were some points where Willow was just a little bit too excited. So I guess she's at that age now where, you know, she's exploring sex and sexuality and all that. So she was happy about the conversation. So when asked about her introduction to sex, she threw another bomb at Jada. And I just love how Willow be sharing the stuff on the show, and Jada be like, wait, hold on, when did that happen? So according to Willow, she was introduced to sex during a family vacation when she walked in on Jada and Will getting busy doing the nasty. Jada was like, well, what was this at? And she was like, they were in Aspen or somewhere. And then Jada said, well, what did you do? And she said, well, she just felt like she had walked in on a moment that she shouldn't have walked in on. So she quietly closed the door and went on back to her room and waited to ask her a question at a later date and time. And so she says that she wasn't scarred by the experience at all, because she understood that, you know, that's what mommies and daddies do. So Jada asks if she finds it difficult to talk to her dad about sex, and Willow says that she doesn't find it difficult to talk to Will about sex, but she does find it to be a little bit annoying because Will is very technical and very serious, and he comes up with these intellectual responses that make her regret she ever even said anything to him. So then Talana says that her father is very uncomfortable talking to her about sex, and that she feels that it's best that mothers talk to their daughters and fathers talk to the sons about sex. And then Jada, I think Willow asks Jada, did she talk to Trey and Jaden about sex? And Willow says that she knew the moment that both of them had lost their virginity and started having sex, and that Jaden was kind of embarrassed by it, but he did eventually say, "Yeah, I did." And so Willow was like, "Well, how did you know?" And then Jaden said, "You just know. You can just tell they've reached another level of maturity." And then she went on to say that she even knows when Willow's friends have started having sex. And I was sitting there like, but do you know if Willow has had sex, Jada? Like, or is she supposed to still be a virgin? Or are you not willing to explore that conversation with her on camera? Or was that part of the conversation that was left on the editing room floor? Because I'm thinking that we got to have full transparency if we're going to buy into this show and be excited. I mean, I'm excited about the show. I love the show. But some of the stuff that I feel like getting edited out this conversation, I think needs to be on the conversation, especially when the shows really aren't that long. Like some of them have been less than 15 minutes, I think, and then this one was probably around 18 minutes or something. So we got a little more room to be adding a little more information, Jada. So then they get into a discussion with Gammy about her first time having sex. So Gammy says that her first experience was very painful and that she didn't want the same thing for Jada. But it turns out that Miss Jada, when she was 9 years old, her grandmother taught her how to masturbate. And I was like, okay. And then I'm trying to picture Janie Darity and Mamie Wilson trying to tell me about masturbating, or even my mother coming to me telling me at 9 years old how to masturbate. That just seems so creepy to me. And I'm glad my girls are grown now, because that's not even something I'm trying to show my own children. Like, what? Like, y'all explain this to me. Like, how do you teach a 9-year-old how to masturbate? I mean, do they pull down their clothes and you're telling them what to touch and what to feel? Or are you just illustrating to them what, verbally telling them what they're supposed to do? Like, how does that conversation go? How does that happen? And then they show the picture of Jada, her mom, and her grandmom. Now Jada and her mom are very beautiful women, but grandma looked a little butch to me. So I know she was married and everything, but she had like some masculinity to me. And then I got to thinking, now we're gonna sit there and celebrate the grandmother teaching the granddaughter how to masturbate. But what if the table was turned and the father was teaching the son, a 9-year-old boy, how to masturbate? Would that have been seen as the same thing, or would we be yelling that that was child molestation and all this other stuff? Because there seems to be a double standard when it comes to what mothers can show and teach their daughters, opposed to what men can show and teach their sons. So Gammy shares that her and her mother, never had that type of talk or lesson, and that she was told, don't be out letting boys stick their dirty tongues in your mouth. Like, that was her lesson on sex. And then Jada adds in, and don't be letting them stick their penis in your mouth either. So I'm like, okay, so Will, you can get no oral sex? Because Jada didn't seem to be too pleased about men putting their penises in a woman's mouth. So Jada says that women are trained that sex isn't for them, that it's only for the men, and only the man is supposed to seek pleasure. And I disagree with that. And I think they touch on it later on in the show about the differences. But I don't know where the concept comes from that sex is only for the men. I mean, I think kind of like biblically it may be in there because you know sex was really designed just for procreation. It wasn't supposed to be about pleasure and spreading it around and just letting everybody have a turn at it. So maybe that's where they get that concept from. But I've never felt that if I'm having sex with somebody that I shouldn't enjoy it, that only he's supposed to enjoy it. So Gammy had to learn that this wasn't the truth and she had to figure it out for herself, she said. And so Gammy had a conversation with her friends and they were talking about sex toys. And Gammy said that she had never had any experiences with sex toys. And she, you know, like I know personally, I don't use vibrators or anything. I always tell people there are no foreign objects going in this body. I don't understand the fascination. I've gone to like friends have done like the pleasure parties and everything where they're selling the toys and the lubricants and stuff like that. But I just have never been into that. And then they were talking about using sex toys on one another. And I said, I think Jada said that she wasn't into, like if she's with her partner, she doesn't want to bring in sex toys, that's not something that they get into. So Jada says that she was experimental, I guess at a young age, since she learned how to masturbate at 9, but she didn't go into what all being experimental meant. But then she tells Talana that by the time she was 21, she was giving herself multiple orgasms and was proficient in pleasuring herself with sex toys. And so she said that she did that because she was abstaining from having sex with men, so she would do things to herself. She said, but then it turned into an addiction because now that was all she really wanted to do. And I wonder if men who masturbate a lot, if they go through that where they like they're so used to pleasuring themselves that when they have sex with a woman, if they're not you know, having an orgasm quick enough, do they then want to turn to masturbation and get it on themselves? And I always wonder about that, like how does that work with men? So then the conversation went to losing your virginity. And so Jada says that she finds that a lot of older women who are still virgins will go out and just have sex with any random guy just to say that they've had the experience, and that she doesn't necessarily think that that's a good idea. So then Jada asked Willow and Talana, like, how do kids hook up nowadays? And so Talana was saying that people her age, they usually have their first introduction through the DMs, the direct messages. Like somebody sees you on social media, they think you're hot, so then they'll slip you a message in the DM. And then Gammy says that it's just a lack of social skills that you would be hooking up with people that you meet on social media that they'll send you some stupid message about they think you hot, sexy, or whatever. And Willow says that she finds it very unattractive. And Talana say don't judge her. You know, you got to get in where you fit in, and if you meet somebody through direct messaging, it's up to you to make the best of it. So today, girls are having sex with multiple partners is no longer seen as a whore because when Jada asked the question, the girls said that they think that having respect is more important than having love, and that as long as you're being healthy, I guess using condoms, getting tested for HIV, knowing your status and all of that, it doesn't matter how many men that you sleep with. And I'm gonna have to find this picture for you guys that I always post on National HIV Awareness Day, and it's of this girl sitting on a bed and there's like thousands of condoms like all around the room, just pinned on the wall all around the room. And when you out there just screwing any and everybody, that's, you should just feel some kind of dirtiness and some kind of shameness that you out there just spreading it all around. And I don't think it's a double standard. I think boys should feel a certain way about just having random sex with a whole bunch of girls, and girls should definitely feel a certain kind of way about just spreading it around and having sex with a whole bunch of different boys. Because I do believe that that affects your psyche and that it sticks with you. And no matter how much people say it doesn't bother them, I think at some point in time you get to a place in life where you are thinking about, like, damn, am I a hoe? Like, why did I let? And then what if you have sex with somebody and then a week later, you know, he's out with another girl and he's talking negatively about you, or he's putting you down, and then you feeling like you done gave your most prized possession to this person and they just took it for granted. So then on the subject of monogamy, Willow says that monogamy would not work for her. That she doesn't want to be with one partner. She thinks it's controlling. She doesn't want to, lose her freedom to explore and do whatever she wants to do. So Jada, who is married, remember her and Will have been married for about 20 years now, says that she doesn't like the feeling that she's obligated to be with one person or obligated to have sex with one person. Or no, she didn't feel obligated to have sex with her husband, and that just because he wants to have sex. And she hates when people say that if a woman doesn't please her man, then somebody else will, and that she believes that if you don't want to have sex, you have the right to tell your partner that you don't want to have sex. But I'm thinking, how long does that last? Because I know on the show Southern Charm New Orleans, it was a black couple on there, and I don't think they had sex in 4 years or 4 months. It was like a really long time. I think it was 4 years that she hasn't wanted to have sex, but I guess she has sex with him every now and then, but it's like so infrequent that he probably don't even remember when he had it. So that was like part of their storyline, was that she needed to open up and start taking care of her man before somebody else do. So then we learned that Gammy has been married 4 times. Like, she's currently on her 4th marriage. And I think that people that get married repeatedly like that have some other issues going on. I ain't trying to judge Gammy, but you did say you went to therapy, so maybe y'all worked it out. So she said that one of her husbands told her to go see a therapist about her sex hang-ups, and I guess it worked because she seems to be less uptight and enjoying her current husband more. So Gammy says that she is happy for Jada and her sexual freedom because she never felt she had that. Then Willow voices her anger at the thought that a man has the nerve to tell a woman anything about her sexuality, or that Gammy's husband told her she needed to go see a sex therapist. So she was kind of like in her feelings about that. So I'm thinking I'm thinking Willow's going to turn out to be a lesbian, because she seemed to have some serious hang-ups when it comes to men and and all of that. So somehow the conversation went to molestation. I don't know how we made the transition that quickly, because they started out chastising Willow, for not understanding that men are just as part of the equation as women are, especially when you're in a relationship. So Jada, started talking about not allowing Willow and Jaden to spend the night at friends' houses, and how that was a no-no. They would never allow that. And so I thought that was really sad, because when I was growing up, I had sleepovers with my friends. I went to their homes. They came to our home. I never felt unsafe, and I don't think my dad ever made any of my friends feel unsafe. And so my parents, they always wanted to meet the parents of kids that I was friends with and whose home I was going to go to. But, as long as they felt comfortable with the parents, they didn't have an issue. And I have even spent weekends with, school teachers that befriended me, have invited me and other kids to spend the weekend at their home, and they were married and everything. And I even have a bus driver that I used to go to her house hanging. Actually, I had 2 bus drivers. I had a white bus driver and a black bus driver. And they would invite us over. The white bus driver, they had a swimming pool, we had pool parties and pizza. And I think she actually had 2 boys. The black bus driver, she had girls, but we go to their houses, have a great time. But I guess kids don't get to do that nowadays. And I'm glad that my kids were able to have that experience where you could go do sleepovers, and there wasn't this stigma that, and then maybe I was just naive because I wasn't raised in a household where molestation and all of that was taking place. So maybe I didn't know that was a possibility, but it never happened. But I like to think that I instilled in my kids that if somebody ever did something to you, that you can come and talk to me about anything, like anything that's uncomfortable to you, that anybody said to you, done to you, that you can come to me. And so because I had that relationship then maybe that's why I felt okay with it. But never had an issue with that. Don't think my kids have ever had an issue with that. And I would think that if something did happen and then the person wanted them to spend the night again and they said no, that would like seriously be a red flag to me. Like, hey, what happened when you were over there last time that you don't want to go back over there this time? The show ended after that topic, and then we had that bowl of questions again, which once again, I don't understand how they were getting comments from the viewers with the show. Because I know when the show come to me and I get the notification that it is up. It isn't a live show. It is a pre-recorded show that they done loaded and pretending that it's a live show. But anyway, the questions were, what is the favorite part of a man's body? And Willow said that his brain. She loves a really smart guy. Jada says that she loves the neck and shoulder area of a man. And I think Talana says that she likes a man with strong back. And then the next question was, do you believe in love at first sight? And Talana says, yes, she does. That she could look in a person's eyes and immediately be in love with them. And then Gammy got the question, is there anything sexual that you have ever wanted to do but never explored? And Gammy pleaded the fifth on that. Oh, and then also, I think Jada got the question, do you think that great sex is necessary for a great relationship? And she said for her, the answer would be no. But then again, she's been with her same partner for like 20 years. So sex is no longer a priority in their relationship. And they're, exploring other avenues. And they got other things to talk about. But maybe in the beginning of the relationship, when you don't really know the person, sex is important. But I say in the beginning of the relationship, you shouldn't be having sex with anybody. Like, you need to get to know the person first before you decide whether or not you want to have sex with them. And we go on to the second show, which is the Q&A. You guys know the show airs on Mondays, and then they have the Q&A on Wednesday. And so the Q&A this week was with Gammy and Jada. And so the first question was, why was Adrian's mom, Adrian is Gammy, more open with Jada than she was with with Gammy? And so Gammy says that she figured that her mom was doing the best that she knew how, and that she wished that her mom had shared with her that she was talking to her child about having sex, and that she was really hurt when she learned later on, when Jada told her later on about the conversations and the grandmother teaching her, how to pleasure herself. And Gammy said that she would never cross that boundary, that she thought it was disrespectful. And then Jada chimed in and said that her grandmother probably felt more comfortable because she was one of the first teachers to offer or to teach sex education in the public school system. And then Gammy admits that, in hindsight, she appreciates what the mother did, but she really wished that she had talked to her, and that, her mother may have wanted something different for Jada than she had for herself, or the way that she had failed Gammy in teaching Gammy about sex and relationships and all of that stuff. And then, maybe she didn't want Jada to become a teen parent as Gammy did. And so the second question was, my mom is very old school. I am 40 and still embarrassed to talk about sex. Jada said women need to trust their own sexuality before they go trying to discuss sex with anybody else. So Gammy says that it is about trusting your partner, and the love that you have for each other should allow you to open up and talk about what you're feeling and wanting, and that, she had to free herself of her past experiences and share with her current husband about her past relationships with other people. And then the next question was, a guy wrote in and he asked he says that he has a very strong sexual appetite. His wife does not, and that, there's only so much masturbating that he can do. That, he needs his wife to understand that he needs more sex. So Gammy says that communication and trusting your partner to let them know what you are feeling, and that she has to feel free to explain why she doesn't want to have sex with him, that he can't go into it thinking that it's all about him, and that something has to be going on with the woman, that she doesn't want to have sex with her man all the time. And then Jada says that you have to learn to have emotional intimacy, and that men are so physical and they think that intimacy is about having physical sex with a woman, and that's not always the case. Like, try to have sex with our minds, talk to us, and figure out what we like, what our desires are, what our fantasies and all that stuff is. So Gammy says, don't be afraid to get counseling. And then she lets the audience know that her and Jada are not professionals, that they're just speaking from their own personal experiences. And if you got some deep issues going on, you need to go call your primary care physician and ask your primary care physician to give you some recommendations for a psychiatrist. Talk about your issues, and they'll be listening to her and Jada. Okay, and then the next question was, my daughter is 12 and I am unsure how detailed I should be. I have done the scaring part. Now I want to tell her about the good parts. So Gammy says that it's scary with social media and television, and that she's glad she doesn't have that issue, so she deferred it over to Jada. So Jada says that, daughters learn from us and how comfortable we are with our own sexuality, and so that the mom needs to check herself before she talks to her daughter so she doesn't pass on the wrong energy. And she says that Willow is so connected to her and follows everything that she does, so she has to make sure she is on point. So then they ask, did you ever explain to Jaden why he couldn't spend the night? And so Jada says that yes, she did explain to her kids, but her grandmother and Gammy never explained to her. And then Gammy said that in her culture, they just didn't play that. And then she went on to say that it was really only one particular family that they were worried about. And just to expound on that, I think that if you have a good relationship with your children, where your children can come and talk to you, and that they know, if something is not right. Because I look back at my own parents, and I can't remember my parents talking to us about, like if somebody touches you inappropriately, or, they just basically say, if you want to come home, call us and we'll come get you. But I feel like I just always had a sense of awareness that if somebody touched me inappropriately, that I would know to tell my parents. And I, instilled that in my kids also. Like, there's nothing that you can't talk to me about. And if something crazy is going on, you can come to me and tell me about it. Now, my kids may be afraid that I might do something crazy, but I just think that the option and the opportunity was there to have that conversation. Then they ask, has fully owning your sexual experiences intimidated or excited your partners? And neither one of them really answered this question. Jada said that when you come to the table with awareness, it makes it exciting. I don't know what that was supposed to mean. Gammy says, how do you tell someone how to pleasure you if you don't know how to pleasure yourself? Now, that was their answers to the question. Now, my answer to the question is this. Don't sit there and tell your man about all the other men that you have been with, and definitely don't share with your man something that another man did that excited you or gave you pleasure or whatever, because then he's going to always feel like he's not living up to that person's expectations. And it's the same with the women. Like, I don't want to hear about women that a guy has slept with, and I don't want to hear about the nasty, kinky, freaky things that another woman has done with him, because I may not be willing to do those things. And then now you got me feeling like if I don't do them, then you're going to go back to her. Like, we ain't having that conversation. So, I mean, it's okay to tell your partner what you like and what you don't like, but don't bring past experiences into your relationship. Then they ask, waiting to have sex after marriage, is that a good thing? And they agreed that it's subjective and it's based on you as an individual, what your religious views are, what your personal views are. How do you feel about spreading it around to a whole bunch of people, or having sex with somebody that may the next day dump you? It's sort of like that whole stupid 90-day rule. Like, don't have sex with a guy until after 90 days, and then you have sex on the 91st day, and then on the 92nd day, he done moved on to the next conquest, because men will be as nice and kind as they can be until they get what they want. So, it's all about you and how you feel about yourself, whether or not you want to wait or not. And then the last question was, what do you say when your 5-year-old asks where babies come from? Is there a difference between boys and girls? And Jada says that it is there, that the plant is that the seed is planted about sex, and that when Willow came to her and asked her where babies come from, that she actually went out and bought a book that explained it and had illustrations, and they sat down and read the book together and had a conversation. And then she taught Willow that, you know, women giving birth is a powerful thing, and that women, you know, bring life into the world, and it's not something that should be taken for granted. And now Willow has like so much respect for pregnant women. She honors them and all of that good stuff. And then Gammy says, don't be planting fairy tales in your children's mind. Be honest and upfront with them, and let them know that it's not about just having sex and getting pregnant and having the baby, that, you know, parenthood is a lifelong responsibility. And then on a side note, that show ended, but then today they posted a new video about vaginal rejuvenation, where Jada has taken Gammy to the doctor to talk about, you know, the whole process and the procedure, and to see if Gammy wants to do it. And Gammy seemed really uncomfortable with the conversation, and the lady pulled out the tools and everything, and it really just looked like a vibrator to me. And she was saying like what it does and what it feels like, and some women have orgasms during the process, and how it actually is not really about sex. It's about, it works with bladder control, and I guess Jada had issues with her bladder, and that's when she started doing it, and it fixed the problem. And then it also poofs up the lips of the vagina, and I'm trying to figure out like what's going on in your sex life that the lips of your vagina has flattened out. That just seems so crazy to me. But anyway, that was another video if you haven't caught that one. So guys, that's it for this week's Table Talk recap. Let me know what you thought about the episode. Rate the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, everyone have a great weekend. Bye-bye.